It's Thursday, December 14th, 2023. Let's talk about the news. From the Wall Street Journal, COP28 nations agree for first time to transition away from fossil fuels. Representatives from the more than 190 governments that took part in the most recent UN Climate Change Conference, or COP28 Summit, have approved a document that calls for a transition away from fossil fuels for the first time. This is far from the only outcome of this meeting, where nations come up with goals and standards meant to help address the ever-increasing problems associated with human-amplified climate change. But it was the most contentious, especially since the meeting was hosted in the UAE, a petrostate, and because the OPEC oil cartel attempted to put its thumb on the scale, warning its members that language favored by many non-petrostate nations calling for a phase-out of fossil fuels would present a threat to their continued economic well-being. Ultimately, member nations agreed on language that calls for, quote, transitioning away from fossil fuels in energy systems in a just, orderly, and equitable manner, end quote, which is similar but not exactly the same thing, and leaves a lot of room for interpretation, though many environmentalists are claiming this as a watered-down victory, as it brought the term fossil fuels into the final COP document for the first time, and could serve as a foot in the door for more concrete fossil fuel-related goals at future meetings. From the Associated Press, UN General Assembly votes overwhelmingly to demand a humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. The United Nations General Assembly has voted 153-10 in favor of a resolution calling for a ceasefire in Gaza, with 23 nations abstaining and only Israel, the US, Austria, the Czech Republic, Guatemala, Liberia, Micronesia, Nauru, Papua New Guinea, and Paraguay opposing it. This resolution is non-binding and follows a UN Security Council vote on the same issue last week that failed because the US vetoed it, but it's still considered to be a pretty big deal, as it indicates how little support Israel's invasion of the Gaza Strip has in the international community. And this is something that's beginning to show up in US statements on the matter as well, the government segueing from a posture of, we will support Israel no matter what, to Biden recently saying that the Israeli government is losing international support because of the seemingly indiscriminate nature of its bombing campaign in the region and the massive and growing humanitarian crisis it is creating as a consequence. And from Reuters, Poland's Donald Tusk wins confidence vote, sets pro-EU path. Poland's new government, led by former Polish Prime Minister and former President of the European Council, Donald Tusk, has won a vote of confidence, 248-201, and Tusk has said that he will help nudge the country back into line with European values after a period of heightened nationalism and anti-European sentiment. This could represent a significant pivot for Poland, as the outgoing Law and Justice Party has run things since 2015 and struck a fairly oppositional stance against all things EU, while pulling the country in a generally radical right-wing direction. Tusk, in contrast, says he wants to double down on the country's support of Ukraine and its NATO allies, wants to increase trade relations with other EU nations, and wants to unravel the government overhauls the Law and Justice Party was trying to implement, purportedly in order to disempower the judicial system and to lock its own power into place. If you're finding some value in One Sentence News, consider leaving a quick review wherever you get your podcasts and or sharing the show with a friend. You can find out more about this show or subscribe to the email version at onesentencenews.com. And you can support this and other related projects, like the Let's Know Things and Brain Lenses podcasts at understandery.com.